I worked nights as a facility security officer for the North River Municipal Building. It wasn't the kind of job people imagine when they hear security. No uniformed guards pacing with flashlights, no cameras feeding into a command center. Just me, badge, a radio, and a checklist that never changed. The building was old, concrete and glass from the late 70s. 6 floors tall, built when architects believed straight lines could solve everything. During the day it housed clerks, inspectors, record staff. At night, it was supposed to be empty. My job was to make sure it stayed that way. Every shift followed the same routine. Clock in at 10 p.m., walk the perimeter, check stairwells, ride the elevator to each floor, verify locked offices, sign my initials on the clipboard outside records, payroll, NIT. Then sit in the security booth until morning, listening to the building breathe. I like the predictability. Buildings tell you their habits if you spend enough time with them. You learn where their pipes knock, which lights flicker, which doors stick in winter. I'd never really thought about how often the building had been renovated, only that every few years something was repainted, renumbered, or quietly changed. The North River building had been my second home for almost 3 years. That's why I noticed when the map didn't match the hallway. It was a Tuesday night, sometime after midnight. The 5th floor was always the quietest. Records, storage, microfilm rooms, a few unused offices. I stepped out of the elevator and did what I always did. Unfolded the laminated floor plan clipped to my belt. The map showed rooms 501 through 610. Storage closets, file rooms, maintenance access. No surprises. I walked the hall, counting the doors out of habit. 501, 502, 503. Halfway down the corridor, the lights dimmed slightly, the way they always did near the old ventilation shaft. Then I saw it. A door at the very end of the hall. Gray, metal, same as the rest. A small rectangular plaque screwed into the frame. 611. I stopped walking. The number itself wasn't strange. Buildings renumber things all the time. Offices get repurposed, storage gets converted. But the map in my hand didn't have a room 611. The hallway wasn't long enough for it. I walked back a few steps and counted again. Slower this time. 508, 509, 510. There shouldn't have been anything past that. The blueprint showed a solid wall, mechanical space behind it, but the hallway didn't end where it was supposed to. It extended another 10 feet, and at the end of it was a door that shouldn't exist. I did what you're trained to do when something doesn't line up. I checked the handle. Locked. No window, no access card reader, no keypad, just a keyhole I'd never seen before, older than the rest, narrow and vertical. I made a note on my clipboard and finished my rounds, telling myself it was nothing. A forgotten renumbering, a map that hadn't been updated in decades. Still, when I rode the elevator down, I felt unsettled in a way I couldn't quite explain, like I'd miscounted something important. The next night, I asked the supervisor. "Hey," I said over the radio, while signing in. "Does the 5th floor have a room 611 now?" There was a pause, papers shifting on to the other end. "Room 611? He repeated. "No. 5th floor goes only to 610. "I saw a door," I said, "at the end of the hall marked 611. Another pause. Longer this time. "You probably misread it," he said, "or it's an old maintenance label. Don't worry about it." That should have been the end of it. But the third night, door was still there. Same gray metal, same plaque, same locked handle. This time, I brought the official floor binder from the security booth. the one with printed blueprints stamped and signed by the city. I laid it open on the floor beneath the fluorescent lights and matched each door to the diagram. Every room lined up perfectly, until the end. According to the blueprint, the hallway stopped 6 feet before the door I was standing in front of. Behind that wall was listed as mechanical chase, no access. I knocked on the door, not hard, just enough to hear the sound. It didn't echo the way the other rooms did. It sounded padded, like the noise had been absorbed. I pulled my hand back and felt foolish. I was knocking on a door that shouldn't exist in an empty building at 1 a.m. The following night, I filed a maintenance request. Unmarked door beyond room 610, I wrote. Not shown on blueprints. Please verify. 2 days later, the request was marked resolved. No notes, no explanation. When I asked maintenance directly, the answer was always the same. There is no room 611. Records said the same thing. So did facilities. So did the city archivist. When I cornered him one afternoon before my shift, "There's never been a room 611 in that building," he said, tapping the table for emphasis. "If there were, it would be in the original plans. It's not." "But I've seen it," I said. "Multiple times." He smiled thinly, the way they do when they're done humoring you. "Buildings don't grow rooms," he said. That night, the door was open. Just a crack, maybe 2 inches, enough for light to spill into the hallway. The light wasn't fluorescent. It was warmer, softer, almost yellow. I stood there longer than I should have. Every instinct told me to close it, radio it in, pretend I'd never seen it. Instead, I pushed the door open the rest of the way. Room 611 wasn't large, maybe 10 by 12 feet. No windows, no furniture. The walls were unfinished concrete, like the mechanical spaces behind elevators. The floor was bare, no outlets, no vents, except for one thing. On the far wall, bolted directly into the concrete, was a corkboard. Old. The edges were frayed, the surface pitted with hundreds of pinholes. Pinned to it were floor plans, not copies, originals. Blueprints of the North River Municipal Building, yellowed with age, layered one over another, each one slightly different. I stepped closer. The earliest plans showed 5 floors, no 6th. Later versions added the 6th floor. Later still, the hallways shifted. Offices were added, storage rooms moved, and on the most recent blueprint, dated only 3 years ago, there was a thin, penciled rectangle at the end of the 5th floor hallway, labeled simply 611. I flipped the blueprint over. On the back, written in neat block letters, was a list of names. Dozens of them. Some were crossed out. Some weren't. I recognized one. Mine. My radio crackled behind me. "Security to control," the supervisor's voice said. "Why are you off route?" I turned around. The hallway outside the room looked wrong. Longer than it should have been. The fluorescent lights flickered, stretching away in a way that made my stomach twist. "I found something," I said into the radio. "You need to see this." There was a pause. Then a different voice came on the line. Not my supervisor. "We know," it said calmly. "Please close the door." "What is this place?" I asked. Silence. Then, room 611 was never on the blueprints. "I've seen the plans," I said. You added it. No, the voice replied. The building did. I looked back at the corkboard, at the layers of paper, at the way the plan seemed to inch toward that final rectangle. Year by year, like a correction slowly being accepted. What happens to the names, I asked. They stay, the voice said, so the building can remember. The radio went dead. I left that job the next morning. Didn't give notice. Didn't ask for references. I told myself I'd imagined it. Stress, fatigue. A mind filling gaps it didn't like. A month later, I drove past the North River Municipal Building on the way to a new job. They were renovating. New glass, new signage, updated floor directories mounted in the lobby. Out of curiosity, I stopped and walked inside. The directory listed rooms for each floor. When I reached the 5th floor, my breath caught. Rooms 501 through 611. I followed the hallway. It ended exactly where it always had. No extra space. No door. Just a solid concrete wall, painted over. It didn't need a door anymore, but mounted neatly beside it was a small plaque. Room 611. Records. There was no door, just the name. And underneath it, in smaller text, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. Authorized personnel only.